Loki is honestly one of the most broken characters that we have seen in One Piece for quite some time. And really, it is that crazy, as where he currently scales is basically the strongest character in the One Piece series as of this current age. We are obviously not including a character like Emu. He is so strong that Oda actually nerfs him in this arc, as if Oda doesn't nerf Loki in this arc, he would overshadow everyone. That's why in this video, we are breaking down exactly how strong a lore accurate Loki is, to see how he would actually compare to the top characters in the series. But before we start, if you enjoy my One Piece videos, consider giving this a like and a hype, as you should definitely expect more One Piece videos to be published. So starting off with one of the claims that I made, Oda nerfed Loki in this arc. Some people may have forgotten this to have been the case, but it was actually mentioned before the amazing flashback arc that we ended up receiving, where we ended up seeing characters like Rocks. But prior to all that being the case, we see that Loki was severely injured. Most of the damage was done by Shamrock, who ends up hitting Loki while he is imprisoned with his Cypress. This attack was deadly, not only due to the strength that Shamrock obviously has, but also due to the fact that Loki was in prison with chains that had sea stone properties, which for a character who has a devil fruit, as we come to learn in the flashback, is something that heavily ended up weakening Loki. But even with that being the case, he was able to take that attack and not end up dying, which is a pretty crazy feat from Loki. But let's also not forget the fact that Luffy and Zoro did get a couple hits on Loki even after Loki had already tanked a Shamrock attack. But all of this is important due to the simple point that we learned that after this, while they end up healing Loki and adding more bandages, making sure that he's all good for this upcoming battle, we learned that he is not going to be at full power for another several months. Which means that the Loki that we're seeing in this fight is not a complete representation of Loki at his actual full power. It will be nowhere near that. So how exactly would a lore accurate Loki scale? Just how strong would he be at full power? The first thing that we have to discuss is him as a baby, as he has some of the craziest feats that I've personally seen at just his toddler age. We see a baby Loki already able to climb out of the underworld. The underworld is described as a place where no one dares to venture, and all the prisoners of Elbaf, which is considered the strongest nation in all of One Piece, but their prisoners are sent there, and it acts as an execution ground due to the fact that there are multiple dark beasts that are roaming around and basically executing various people that go in these lands. But guess what we see a baby Loki do? We see that Loki, as a toddler, is climbing his way out of there. And if you pay attention to what is below Loki, you would see one of the beasts completely decimated. Yes, Loki as a baby was able to take care of one of these dark beasts that make the underworld look so scary to prisoners of one of the strongest nations of the entirety of the One Piece verse. Loki as a baby is easily able to take care of them. He is already a monster at that age. And as a child, we see that Loki makes the underworld his playground. We see him often going there when he is just chilling. He ends up meeting with Rocks in that location, and the underground is Loki's place to chill with nobody who is disturbing him, as he basically ended up being raised in the underworld. But I find this very fascinating and something pretty cool about Loki, but all of this really doesn't even compare to Loki at his adult form when he ends up growing up. Because when Loki ends up meeting with Luffy for the first time, he ends up trying to make a deal with Luffy. Loki basically tells Luffy that, yo, if you undo all of these chains, you got any pirates that you're trying to take care of, any rival crew that you have, I'll take care of it for you in an instant. Luffy is a Yonko, and for Loki to make this statement directly mentioning a rival crew for Luffy, it means that he is talking about the Yonkos, because those are Luffy's rivals. And obviously we're not talking about Buggy. We're not talking about that clown. His Yonko position is not authentic, so it doesn't even count. Loki is talking about them top dogs. He is talking about the people who are up there. And when it comes to the Yonkos, he was like, Luffy, pick and choose. Whichever you want, I'll take them out. All you gotta do is unleash these chains. And this is basically backed up by the claim that a lot of LBAF characters have. They basically say that if Loki is released, it will be the end of the world. They don't just talk about LBAF, they're talking about it will ruin the entire world just due to the strength that Loki has. And obviously, when this chapter was first released, we had a lot of people who mentioned the fact that the rivals that Loki was referencing was characters like Kid and Law. But pause for a quick second. Don't ever put Kid and Law in the same sentence as Luffy. Such disrespect will not be tolerated. You cannot put these two bums in the same category, I'm sorry. But even if you were to go with that logic, they have already been packed up. Shanks took care of Kid, we all saw that happen, and Blackbeard, using some of that off-screen black magic, he packed up Law quite easily. But one question real quick. Who do you guys think is actually still alive? If you guys were to place a bet, would you bet on Kid being still alive or Law being still alive? Or maybe even both. We know that Oda doesn't really kill characters like that. But regardless of what interpretation people end up going with, what we do see in the flashback ends up showcasing that Loki, even if he was referencing the Yonkos, it would be something that he would easily be able to do. The Harald flashback proves beyond any reasonable doubt that Loki would be able to take care of any of the Yonkos. First, let's describe just how strong Harald is, because it is important to what we will be discussing later. Harald shows that he is bare minimum on the same level as Rocks. We see them clash multiple times when they fight, and they are pretty even. Although I personally couldn't say who is stronger between Harald and Rocks, we can at least say that they are relative to one another. This is important due to the fact that Rocks was the strongest pirate in his age. His age is literally named after him, where Rocks was just that guy that the world government couldn't control and that no pirate could simply control. In his era, he was the strongest and had rivals like Roger and Garp, but although I do believe that Rocks is stronger, I don't believe it is by a crazy margin. I still believe that they're in the same tier, but Rocks is still stronger. It's like Madara and Hashirama being in the same tier, but Hashirama is clearly stronger. But in the flashback, we do end up seeing that Rocks ends up getting Dami reversed. And this makes him even stronger than before. It ended up taking Garp and Roger using their maximum output of their Conqueror's Haki to end up taking Rocks out. It didn't even kill Rocks, which is pretty surprising. We still end up seeing that Rocks is alive. But obviously, the biggest fraud of mankind, Saint Fraudulent Garland, he ended up coming and he stole the kill even though it wasn't really authentic. But I want you guys to keep this in mind for what we end up discussing next. We also end up seeing that just like Rocks, Harald also ends up getting Dami reversed due to Emu, as he ended up taking the highest marking of the contract. And we see that Emu is able to take control of his body and even give out suggestions that end up altering Harald's personality. But guess who ends up taking Harald out when he is Dami reversed? That person is Loki, meaning that Loki would scale above Rocks, Garp, Roger at that specific time in their lives. We do know that Roger wasn't in his prime at this time, as his prime is a little bit later, but at least at that moment in the flashback, he is stronger than those characters. But obviously some people have some things to say against it. And the first thing they would say is that Harald didn't get stronger, but only gained immortality. This first point is easily refuted by the fact that we have a Harald himself who mentions the fact that he feels way stronger than he has ever felt before. The second argument is that Harald let Loki kill him. There are three problems with that. The first problem is that Loki and Harald were fighting each other and were evenly matching each other with even blows. It is only after that that we end up seeing Harald restrain Emu, and then we end up seeing Loki who kills him. So that already disputes that. The second problem is the fact that even if you were to say that Harald ended up letting Loki kill him, we see that characters like Shanks and Gaban, even when they were using their Conqueror's Haki and coating it, they were not able to do any real damage to Harald, as it would still heal back, because they didn't have a large enough output of their Conqueror's Haki. And Gaban literally tells us that Loki is the only one who is going to be able to beat Harald, that whatever him and Shanks are doing is not going to be enough to take down his opponents. And the third problem is that when Harald gets all his powers, he said that he should finally be able to take the devil fruit that is being guarded by Ragnar, as with this new power, he could beat Ragnar and take the devil fruit for his own. But guess who actually ends up taking the devil fruit? That person is Loki, which means that Loki would at least be stronger than Hald before the Dami reverse, and then would be relative to a Dami reverse Hald. Whatever you want to put Loki at, whether you say he is stronger than Hald without the Dami reverse, or he is stronger than Hald with the Dami reverse, whatever you want to put Hald in that conversation, all it ends up proving is the claim I made in the beginning of this video. And that is the fact that Loki would then be one of the strongest characters that we have ever seen in the One Piece verse. He is stronger than multiple fighters that we ended up seeing in the flashback, characters like Kaido and Big Mom, and due to being stronger than characters like Rocks, I would easily put him above multiple characters that we have in this current era. So when he states to Luffy that he could beat one of the Yonkos, I think we definitely have to believe him. And this is also why we see that Oda nerfed him in this arc, as he would literally be too strong and overtake Luffy. Yes, I believe that Loki is stronger than Luffy, and it is one of the many reasons why I don't believe that we will see Loki who ends up joining his crew. One thing that is also really cool about Loki is his bandages, as he ends up wearing it over his eyes, as we know that his mother ended up being afraid of his own son due to the way that his eyes looked. It frightened her, and it was one of the many reasons why Loki was sent to the underground. But even with those bandages, we see that Loki is able to react to multiple characters' moves and is able to fight. This ends up telling us that his observational haki must be through the roof. This is why you have to watch this video right here, as I discuss how Zoro's fighting style in and of itself forced him to awaken haki early in the One Piece series.